right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Director's Chair, our weekly live stream forum in which we are exploring the intersection of leadership and creativity and practical lessons from the creative arts, such as we find them. So in our last two sessions, we looked at the importance of storytelling in creating leadership moments, as Brian talked about. And then subsequently, the performance of story in leadership as theater and how business leaders in the boardroom can benefit from the study of the stage. Today, we're going to explore an extension of sorts of both storytelling and performance in the medium of film and see if we can answer the question of whether or not we can learn anything valuable from leadership in the movies. But before we dive in, I'll see if I can kind of set the table here for us with my own argument. And then, Tom, I'll ask you to kick us off and pose the same question to you and see if you agree or you can completely refute it. So much of the best learning is by example, I think. And if we're lucky, we'll have some really good examples of leadership in our own lives, in mentors that we have had the opportunity to see in action and who have maybe taken us under their wings so that we can learn from them. Leadership is a very amorphous skill, right? And because it's so situational, and the greatest leaders are adaptable. So they know when to follow, when to let others shine, and when to step in or step out, and to be decisive when the situation and their people require it. And though leadership is very situational and amorphous, it's not ambiguous, right? In fact, we know it when we see it. And so examples are really critical for us to have. Especially from a very young age. And that's why I believe that film can be such a powerful medium for showing us what leadership looks like, demonstrating situationally, again, what leadership will look like kind of case by case in recreating powerful scenes from history or telling an incredible story of overcoming insurmountable odds and how leadership of self or others was critical of that. So I'm going to turn it over to our group here for discussion. And Tom, I'll ask you to kick us off. So Tom, do you believe that we can learn anything valuable about leadership from film? And if so, are there some examples that you've seen that really resonated with you in films that or other medium that really resonated with you? And what was the situation? What was the outcome? What was the bottom line? So
cool. Awesome. Put me on the spot early on. I love it.
That's right.
Well, I don't think it would be very conducive to argument or for the show if I said, no, I don't believe that. You know, we can end the show right now. Only kidding. No, 100%, Dan. I mean, yes, you absolutely can learn from movies, from other examples. I'm trying to think of one of my favorite scenes. As you know, I'm a huge Gladiator buff. Love it. Absolutely love that movie. It's great. Not only does it have, it has that military aspect that, I can kind of identify with, but it also has things like a love in there and a nationalism and pride, and really a stick-to-itiveness that I think it has, resonates with many people. I guess probably the best way to do this would be to set the stage almost to illustrate exactly the scene, try and describe it to you guys the best I can.
There are a number of really good ones in that movie, by the way.
Oh yeah,
I'm curious as to what you'll pick.
Yeah, it's a long movie too, so we have about close to 3 hours worth of film to choose from. So high level, Maximus Decimus Meridius, he is a Roman general in the very beginning. I'm not going to give away the whole story, but he basically falls down to a peasant level through some leadership succession planning, I guess, not succession planning, but poor leadership. Someone assumes the new emperor status and basically busts this general down to a nobody. His family's killed, his wife, his kid is killed, and finds himself at the very, very bottom, right? Being sold as a slave, basically. They called him the Spaniard, right? Just total fall from, not necessarily, I'm not going to call it grace because he still had that, that presence and that self-worth, but total fall from status and had nothing. Finds himself in the gladiator arena, finds himself back in Rome and really trying to claw his way back to, nobody knows what that pinnacle is for him, but it's just not at this bottom anymore. And as you continue to watch the movie, you realize he's really fighting for justice and for pride of Rome and for what it stands for and what it stands for the people. So in this scene, that's kind of a backdrop. So in the scene, he's in the gladiator arena. He's got about 20 people, other gladiators in there with him. And if anyone's familiar with the Colosseum in Rome, who knows what they're going to throw at you, right? It could be lions, it could be, tigers, it could be, fighters that are coming at you with more advanced weaponry, whatever it is.
It's a pretty
it's
grim
not
situation, Tom.
Yeah, it's not grim. The outlook isn't good. The outlook isn't good. We'll put it that way. But Maximus, he, with a group of 20 people, automatically assumes that leadership role. And it's not from, him saying, guys, you follow me. It's not all that. It's just his presence and his aura, that thing that he gives off, that steadiness. A lot of people are scared. They don't know what's going to come out of the gates. They have no idea. They're frightened. But he has this inner calm and this presence that make people, it's that we talked about the very first time, Brian, that curiosity. What is it about this person that we want to follow him? So he's not saying anything, but people are naturally drawn to him because of the presence and that comfort that he's able to have.
Because everybody else, Tom, like I'm trying to see myself. They're like, to your point, they have no idea what's about to come at them, but this is life or death.
Yep.
And everyone else is literally, I think someone was literally pissing themselves for that scene. Sure. And so everyone's literally kind of falling, or they're crumbling around him. And Correct. He's kind of that one source of calm, if I recall.
100% right. Well, I'm glad I'm able to set the stage, at least for you. Hopefully other people can follow that are listening.
I'm going to go back and watch it again.
So he gets all the gladiators together into this center circle within the middle of the Colosseum. And he just says, he goes, has anyone been in the army? The few yeses that are around, he goes, great, you can help me. And then he says, whatever comes out of these gates, we have a better chance of survival if we work together. And then all he says is, do you understand me? And a lot of silence and just nodding heads. And he goes, if we stay together, we survive. So this is not a big von Schlieffen plan, right? It's not like, we're on the West, we'll take care of that, then we'll go to the East. It's not that at all. It's very simple. Have you been in the army? No, it's calm. It's very direct. It's easy language, very able to discern. And when you're in a frightened moment, it's very easy, right? Have you been in the army? No. Okay, stick together. We survive. And then throughout that battle scene, you have a few people, stragglers, that don't stick together. They don't stick in that inner circle. And they might be doing well at first because they're away from the group and some, initial successes, but they're the first ones to fall off, I'll call it, to die. But during the time when they're all together, Maximus only says a few things. He goes, stay close, stay together, stay calm. And that's basically it. And then a few times, and then all of a sudden things keep coming out, the enemy, and it's people on chariots and horses, and they have, crossbows and bow and arrows and more advanced weaponry. These guys have swords. I mean, they're they can be attacked from far, and you only can do like close quarters combat, right?
Yeah.
But so totally what's coming out is you are overwhelmed by adversity, right? You're facing adversity, you're overwhelmed by circumstance. And fright would be the first thing that passes through anyone's mind, but he has calm and able to disseminate that among his peer group, I'll call it. And for me, that was just, and I'm sure for many people, it's this ability that, no, we're not going to be in the middle of a Colosseum, right? Hopefully that's not going to happen in our life anytime soon. But we do face adversity, right? When, another company might seem bigger, better, have more resources than us. And, at first we take this more defensive posture and we understand our surroundings and what's happening, but we get our team together, we work together, we understand what's going on when things come out of the gates and we know what the enemy is. We watch, we take that tactical pause, understand what's happening. From there, then we can create a plan on how to overcome, right? But initially it's that overwhelm, scariness, where are we going to go? We have nothing to live for. To bring that presence, bring that calm, bring that teamwork together, and then we will have a better shot at whatever the next step is.
I think we
that was yeah. Go ahead, Roo. I'm sorry.
To today and everything that's going on in the world is like, imagine 3 months ago, if we take it to a business environment, I guarantee you most CEOs were not expecting a pandemic to take place that was going to have such an impact on the world.
Yeah.
Yep. You were thinking about automation, AI, jobs, people in a very different way than we are right now. And this is only 2.5 months ago.
Yep.
So I think this is very interesting because as you were saying some key words, it's funny because we were probably saying a little bit different, but the context overall is the same. Because now we're telling people, we can't be together, say 6 feet apart, but we still need to overcome it together, kind of. So it'll be interesting. How do we correlate the two from a business environment? And what are some examples of people that have done it successfully over the past 2 months, and that they've shown this humility in many ways and like believing in people in order to accomplish it?
Great question. So for me, just because it's the most, top of mind, I'm going to go, and I'm a bit biased because I work for N2 Growth. But one of the things that our leadership did here immediately following the outbreak of what was going on was we canceled work for an entire day. Like we canceled the entire day. We cleared our calendars, and talk about coming together, right? So the Maximus in the arena, he brings everyone together. During that day, we didn't just cancel and let people roam around and figure out, fend for themselves. No, we canceled the day so we could come together as a group. And we had meetings all day on video on, what does this mean? How do we position ourselves? What does it mean to our clients? What does it mean to our customers? What does it mean to the candidates that we speak to every single day, the leaders that we speak to every day? How can we pivot ourselves to be that Maximus, to be that different option, that hope, in whatever's going to come in the future? And I'm bringing up N2 Growth just because it's the clearest and the realest to me. There might be many, great examples or even better examples out there. But for that, just completely canceling what we were doing, our everyday day jobs, and coming together as one to create a plan, to take that pause, that tactical pause, to realize, hey, what's going on? How do we position ourselves that's going to be best for our people? Making sure that we are, number one, we are good as a group, and then how do we position ourselves to maximize the benefit that we can bring to our clients and to candidates? And for me, that was just an ingenious thing that we did for our leadership, that our leadership did for us, and that we didn't, put our tails between our legs and get scared and just wait it out, right? No, we took a very active and measured response to the unknown.
And Tom, I think the thing that was an example there that you just outlined, and also happened immediately in the scene that you laid out for us. And thank you for laying out the situation so well. You put me back into it. Like I may or may not have seen the film about 15 or 20 times. So
unfortunately, I don't have the Hans Zimmer soundtrack blaring in the background.
Although I do have that too. But it was real simple messaging too. It kind of gave you something to hold on to, right? Like we need something to focus on. People will freak out otherwise. They need just something simple to hold on to. Like really good messaging is really crystal clear. Like, what are we going to do in this moment? Let's just focus on the 6 inches in front of us, right? And it was like in Maximus's case, it was like I think you said like 3 points, right? It was like stay close, stay calm, and one other thing. It was stay together, right? Let's just do that. That's all we need to focus on. That's all we need to worry about. And the situation you just described shortly after the pandemic, and Roo, I'm sure many other companies did the same thing. Let's just take a step back. Let's just relax for a second and think about the situation. Let's just focus on what we know, what we don't know, what we can assume, and what this means for us. And let's just focus on that for a minute and not worry about anything else for the time being. Let's put all the other fears on the shelf. I think that's what people need in those moments too.
Well, one of the things that I really loved about Tom's example with Maximus is while he lost everything, he never lost who he was. He never lost his North Star. And I've been watching Mad Men. Many are probably at least familiar with Mad Men, whether you've watched it or not. And my wife will attest that I'm the most irritating person ever in human history to watch any kind of a show, because I think you can learn everything from movies and theater and everything. So when I watch things, I start all the time. And I rewatch it, especially if it's so good. I want it to become a part of me and part of my leadership and teaching even. So back to Gluteus Maximus, there was a scene in, I think, season 4 of Mad Men where the lead character is a guy named Don Draper. And he was teaching advertising to a copywriter. And he said, you need to understand that every time you walk into a room, you bring your entire life with you. Well, whether you lose everything or not, Gluteus Maximus brought his entire life with him. And it's a choice. We all have drama in our life. We have successes. We have failures. But we make a decision every time we walk into a room, what part of our lives we decide to bring with us. Is it our optimistic side? Is it our successes? Is it leadership? Or is it all the other stuff that we bring with us? And
do we bring the baggage, right? To your
we
point.
bring the baggage. You make a decision on that.
Yeah. And that when you step into the room, that's going to affect everybody.
Sure does.
Man, no, that's a very good example. I haven't actually seen Mad Men. I'm ashamed to say, Brian, but
we can all stop right now and spend the 10 hours a day for the next 3 years and not catch up on all the unbelievable programming that exists in the world. And I'll tell you that there's never been a better time in human history to be a director, writer, actor, producer, because the amount of incredible content out there to learn from and entertain ourselves with it's just incredible. We could do this all day long.
I think a big part of that too, Brian, I think you mentioned, watching a show and then identifying like a character and wanting to, take that into your leadership style. I think there's a lot to gain from that approach. I just remember as a kid, like I played sports as a kid. I remember basketball. I was like, I imagined myself as like Allen Iverson, right? He was a big Sixers player, not big. He was small, actually, probably not even 6 foot. But he was a menace, right? He was a menace on the court. And I'm not the tallest person. My brother's 6'4", and I'm like 5'10", 5'11". So I have to try and compete somehow. And I kind of identify with Allen Iverson. I'm like, and so on the court, like I watch him on the games, and then on the court, I try to emulate it and be him. And so you take people, and whether it's a character in a movie or whether it's a role model or mentor that you look up to, you see it, you identify it, and you see what you like, and you take bits and pieces, and you hope to emulate that and make it become part of you. Obviously, there's a huge authenticity part of that you're not just trying to act out to be someone else, but you really want to incorporate that into your essence and into your being. And the more that you have that role model picture in your brain, the better it is to emulate that and adopt it for yourself.
Brian, the other thing I liked about that I took away from your example there was like just the ability that leaders need to have to be able to compartmentalize, because we're all dealing with so much crap all the time, and there's just so much noise going on in our personal lives, or anxiety that we're bringing, even just from a professional standpoint about things we're dealing with. And if you can't compartmentalize and choose some things to kind of put on the shelf and focus on the thing at hand, you risk coming into a room and poisoning it with the crap that you're dealing with that will affect everyone else, and have downstream effects that are just going to be unhealthy too. Your ability to kind of, and another one that's coming up to mind immediately is Pursuit of Happiness. You guys seen?
Great.
No particular scene comes to mind at all. But one of the things that I do really appreciate about the way Will Smith played that is that he was going through so much in his personal life. He had his son with him who was being dragged along through all this. Literally everything was falling apart around him, his marriage, his job, anything could possibly go wrong. It was a painful movie to watch, if you guys recall. It was really painful. But he's able to just still exude at the right moments positivity for his son, and mask sort of everything he's dealing with and shield him from that, and still take care of him throughout all of that, in a way that I know that I would not be able to do. Like it's inspiring. Like just the way he's able to do that and take care of his son throughout all that. And the ability to come up.
It reminds me of the point I made last week, is that the most pitiful quality in a leader is to feel sorry for yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And it seems like there's many reasons for Maximus to feel sorry for himself, many reasons for Will Smith to feel sorry for himself, but they don't let their circumstances define them and who they are, because they know that there are other people out there that depend on them. Maximus would be the entire Roman Empire, maybe a little bit bigger, but for Will Smith, it's his child, right? He is the leader of his kid. And it's just, he's not letting these outside things define him as a person. He has his own identity that he won't let the world change. And I think that's a very powerful thing. I would love to hear, I mean, Laura, from your psychology perspective, when it comes to like emulating or, you know, seeing something and trying to adopt it, is there any type of like psychology teaching that like says that like the benefits of it? Or the one thing that comes to my mind is like when it comes to like sports and practice, and if you close your eyes and you're envisioning doing it, your brain does not know the difference between you actually swinging a club and hitting a golf ball, for example, or you picturing that hit and kind of going through the steps of everything in the muscle memory that has to go through, that your body has to go through. So that's kind of like what comes to my mind, at least on like a sports and muscle memory type thing. Is there anything in psychology that brings up, you know, picking you know, an idol or emulating something and adopting it? I don't know, I'm shooting here, but just would love to kind of hear that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing that I want to touch on really quickly about your, you know, pity, self-pity is not a strong leadership quality, right? It's probably the paradox of leadership. I call that a woe is me personality, right? We all know those people who it doesn't matter what happened, but it's always someone else's fault. It's something that they couldn't control. And so in psychology, you know, a strong leadership quality is having a strong internal locus of control. And that's essentially what all of you have just been talking about. And that's the ability to say, to kind of compartmentalize, right? To table the negative in your life and to say, I have control of this situation. I cannot control what happened to me, but I can control how I react to it. And that is internal locus of control, and that is leadership. But Tom, to your point, so when you were talking about, you know, watching a leader, and Brian, you were talking about going back and rewatching a film over and over, it made me think of sports, right? Because how often does a coach have you watch a play over and over to learn a specific strategy or technique? Even in swimming, we watched film of, you know, Michael Phelps and athletes before him to really understand his technique, how he races, how he does his starts. But then you also, like in acting, I feel like you would watch, you know, actors and actresses performances to be able to kind of get into character, to learn. In piano, we'd watch films of classical pianists, watching them perform. So all of these times, like, you learn, right? And that in psychology, that's called modeling behavior. That's also something that we learn about from parenting and raising children, is how does a leader model behavior? And how do people then take that behavior and transform that into their own behavior? And so I think that's why leading by example is so important. And I think that's why we are attracted to very powerful examples of strong performance, strong leadership, strong ability to move on from failure. We are incredibly attracted to that because we all fail, whether it's something that we did wrong or something that just happened. Again, back to that internal locus of control. We can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we react to it. And so watching leaders who navigate that with success, with aplomb, with grace, that's attractive. And that's how we learn. And we start to develop these ideas in our head of, all right, this is how I can navigate that type of situation.
That's a good example. Thank you, Laura.
Laura, you always say smart things. And one of the things I love, both things I love about locus control and modeling behavior. And one of my all-time favorite scenes in a movie, and I've seen it 50 times. I've seen it again this morning. I just put it up on LinkedIn and Twitter. It's from The Devil Wears Prada with Meryl Streep, where she is playing, I think the name is Anna Wintour. I'm not a fashion person. Anyone who follows her, please don't be insulted. I think I got it. And it's called The Blue Sweater Scene. And Hathaway is someone's junior assistant. Her boss walks into the room, and Meryl Streep's character is getting ready for a show with her team. And Hathaway, as a junior person, didn't really understand what she was looking at and thought it was kind of stupid and giggled. And Meryl Streep said, "Excuse me," and then just started to have the patience in her own very special way to take her through why she didn't understand what she was looking at, and that these little decisions meant millions of jobs and potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in income and results. So instead of just saying, leave the room, she taught it in her very candid, very tough way. But she took the time to do it. And in the end, if you've seen the movie, it's phenomenal. But I see that movie over and over again because it's about candor in leadership. It's about caring enough to be really, really blunt with people, especially young people growing up who oftentimes don't know what it is that they're looking at. You can just dismiss them as a millennial or Generation Y, Rex, or whatever the terms are these days, or you can take the time to teach and teach very bluntly. I just love that scene. If you get a chance to see it, it's called the blue sweater scene. It'll come up immediately on YouTube. It's unbelievable.
Absolutely. Great example.
Laura, you've seen it, right?
Have I seen it?
Good film. Good film.
Only every Friday night, Dan Bentle.
I'm more of a DG person. Dolce Gabbana, hello.
Now you have me back in my Gladiator. Of all the movies of its type, it's my number one. And my favorite scene is the scene where he's about to fight the Emperor's son, and he said, "You'll fight me?" And he said, "I'll fight you. You think I'm afraid?" And Gladiator says, "You have been afraid all of your life." We've all seen that over and over because almost everyone is afraid, and almost everyone doesn't achieve their full potential, almost everybody, because they're afraid. I watch that over and over again, and sometimes when I think I'm going into a situation where I'm teaching and I have fear like anyone else, I think about that scene.
Brian, what you just said, it just like struck a chord to me. And one of the things that one of the most like fun exercises I do, but also like disheartening, is when you ask a group like, hey, if money didn't matter, what would you do? Like, what would be your occupation? And people are like, oh, well, I would do this and I would do that. But then you're like, well, why don't you do it? And then they go, oh, because I'll probably fail. And you're like, well, that's like a great idea, right? But it's just that failure has such a grip and creates this fear in us that we control. It just controls us, right? And it's just having that inner calm and that inner presence that, you know, some of these people like Will Smith or Russell Crowe and Maximus that are able to compartmentalize that fear that Laura talked about, able to compartmentalize that, but then also, you know, have another side of them that's like, you know what, this is the right thing to do. I'm going to go for it. You know, starting at the very bottom as a slave, as Maximus was, how the heck is he going to rise all the way up to free Rome once again from this commodus, terrible emperor? But doesn't matter. Was he himself scared? Was he fearful? I'm sure he was, but he knew what the bigger right was and the bigger calling of who he was as a person. And so that fear part, I love that you brought that up.
To your point, Tom, like really good leaders are able to face and move through their own fear, but also have the courage to help others do that too. And really, maybe subtly in the case of like Maximus, but in ways that inspire people to rise up to do that as well, and just give them the courage also.
And I think that's one of the reasons we're so drawn, all of us are, to characters in movie shows that show courage and fearless. We love that because most of us, all of us, have a level of cowardice in us. And someone said to a friend of mine a long time ago, "You seem fearless." And the person said, I'm afraid like anyone else. I'm terrified. But the ability to be brave is to fight through that fear. And I think that's why we're so drawn to it. But what I would suggest is when you see things like that, learn from it and start to apply it to your life. Just don't passively watch a movie or read a book. If you see some courageous behavior that you think you can do, whatever that is, start to do it, because we're not getting out of this thing alive.
Yeah.
What are you going to lose? You're not getting out of this thing alive. What, are you going to lose your job? So what? Find another one.
Yeah.
So,
one of my favorite quotes that I've had written on my mirror for 10 years is "Feel the fear and do it anyway." So that's important because it's not avoiding the fear, right? It's looking at it face on. It's acknowledging that the fear exists and doing it anyway. Yeah, and naming it, right? Because that takes away some of the emotion and it makes it more of an objective lens of why the fear exists. And actually, really fast before we move on, Tom, I did want to touch on visualization because that's huge. And that's something that's used so much in sports psychology. But there's really interesting new research about neuroplasticity which is our brain's ability to rewire our neural networks that we used to think ended pretty early after infancy, up to about the age of 3. And we now know that all the way through an entire life, an adult has the ability to rewire their neural networks with visualization. And largely this comes through mindfulness, meditation, those types of techniques. So one thing that leaders can do before a big speech or a pitch, athletes do this, performers do this, musicians do this, is you visualize the performance down to the T. You visualize everything. The more detail you can get into, the more times you can go through this visualization leading up to your big event, the more you start to create those neural networks, and you will go through that event almost with muscle memory. So really important in business and performance in every setting. In parenting, you know, visualize where you want to be and you will go there.
Laura, I love that. I've often heard like the phrase that there's power in the details, in a couple of different like sort of contexts, but understanding mentally why that is thank you for making that connection. No, that's a good one.
It's pretty cool. With like tracers, you can actually see on brain scans the way that neural networks rewire. So it's a powerful tool and it's free. I encourage you to do it during this social isolation time.
The price.
Yeah.
So Brian, to your point, like I think one of the things that I don't do enough of this when I'm just taking in entertainment in general, but like watching it with a really critical eye, just the really great examples that do exist out there, and something to be taken in almost anything that we watch. But Roo, I'd be curious, any scenes or examples from films that you've seen or television, you know, that have come to mind that have really resonated with you?
And some of them is just stories. And I've been obsessed with The Last Dance over the past few weeks. That's been the show I've been watching.
The Last Dance?
Yes. So it's all about Michael Jordan last season. And there was something that Brian mentioned earlier about being blunt and sometimes taking the time, how that's important. And it made me think, is that something you can do in this day and age? Are we too sensitive to be led by someone who is blunt? And what I mean by this is, even if as I look at the way Michael Jordan led the Bulls back then into 2-3-piece, something that had never been done before, I think in this day and age, people will complain about the way he went about it. He was super, I don't want to say strict, but he wanted to win at all costs. And if you couldn't perform at his level, you didn't have the right to be at the court with him, and he let it be known. And in this day and age, can you lead in such a way in order to achieve success? Or have we gotten to the point that I don't want to, possibly even as humans, or maybe an American thing per se, that we support the underdog, but once you make it, we make you a villain. And that happens in leadership. That happens in many organizations. Like I've experienced it too. Like I had many friends when I was just a regular employee. Once I got a leadership position, it was like a switch was flipped. What are you guys' thought on that?
Well, I don't mind. I'll start. The answer is yes. And I would postulate that nearly every generation has said we're too politically correct. We can't speak our mind. And naturally, political correctness has been a big part of the conversation for at least the past decade, but I would say forever. I think that leaders choose. They can choose to be blunt, or they can choose to be all things to all people. And when you do that, your team is going to lose. So I think you can be appropriate. You can do all the things that should always be at our core, which is respect. At the same time, candor and bluntness in the right moments in the right time, have always been an effective tool, and it's a choice. People can say, back to Tom and Laura's point earlier about self-pity as a leader, a lot of leaders today throughout time would say, well, I can't really lead the way that I really want to, and they're using it as an excuse. Really, we all know the things that you can and cannot say. But it doesn't mean that it prevents you from leading in a very blunt way. So I don't buy any of that stuff. I think you can lead the same way with respect today as you did 1,000 years ago.
And to your point, Brian, maybe even sometimes like just brutal honesty and candor is the only way to lead. There are situations that just require that. Just
That's why I love the Meryl Streep scene so much.
Mhm.
She was completely elegant, completely respectful, but her tone was flawless. And it certainly changed Anne Hathaway's character forever. She realized a lot there. That was blunt, respectful always, but not too polite. Didn't say anything inappropriate or silly. She was blunt.
Also, Brian, like, here's the thing. For me and my own, being a follower as well as being a leader, people appreciate that. They appreciate that straightforwardness, that bluntness. Obviously, 100%, you have to have that respect, and you can't be saying things that are degrading. But that when you're saying things that are degrading, that's not coming from a place of respect, right? Being blunt and having respect are they're two different things, right? I mean, I think that they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, you can be blunt and be respectful at the same time, because I try and think of some of the best leaders that I've ever had, and some of them were very hard on me. Probably like from coaches to military leaders, they were very hard. They didn't treat me differently than another player or another colleague of mine, but they were very direct in what they needed out of me or what I needed to give in order to maximize my potential and climb to that next rung. So for me, I appreciated that directness. And I think that if someone, can't take that directness or that straightforwardness, then they're not going to be able to maximize their own potential. So it's almost a fault on them as it is on the leader. But for 100%, whoever's listening, you cannot get mistake with being direct and blunt without having that respect. You need that respect because it's coming from a place where you want to see the person that you're directing. You want to see them achieve. You want to see them get better. And as long as it's coming from that point of view, from that perspective, the person who's receiving it, they know it, they understand it, they acknowledge it, and they appreciate it.
Tom, to your point, like, I wonder if this is why we have so many just really good examples of leadership in sports, like Roo, to your point, like, that last season, and just because coaches almost like definitively in the way they lead, like, have to really be that kind of level of direct and tough love with people. I wonder if that's like, again, why we'd see some of those. In fact, a scene's coming to mind. There's an Oliver Stone film called Any Given Sunday. If you guys have seen that. Sure. Which I think is underrated.
Jamie Foxx, Billy Beamer.
That's right. It's an all-star cast. But one of the things I think this kind of calls back to Brian, your point about kind of sobering honesty as well. But what I love about that movie, there's one of the greatest movie speeches, maybe even of all time, I'd say, the Inch by Inch speech, which is just, I think it's a really good example of, and you guys maybe see other things here, but just, I think, sobering honesty and facing reality, vulnerability, and building to moments, Brian, too, like you talked about last time. Let me see if I can kind of lay out the situation here, because it's a really good speech. So it's like, I think it's the Miami Sharks, right? Is like a former all-star football team. They're struggling to make the playoffs. The head coach, Al Pacino's character, he's one of the greatest who's kind of fallen out of favor, fallen from grace, Tom, to your point, with the team ownership. And he's just kind of down on his luck as a leader, too. So he's not at his best. And the team's not doing well that year. In the story kind of leading up to the speech, the team has lost their starting quarterback, I think, and their second string quarterback. And they have a rookie, Tom, I think it's Jamie Foxx, right? Has to step up to the plate, and morale just couldn't be lower, right? And to top it all off, I think some of the team members are going through some real personal hell too in their lives, including the coach. He's devoted so much time, I think, member recalls, to the team and to his career, that he's become estranged from his family and his wife and children. And the starting quarterbacks face some injuries. So, and one of the most, on the eve of the most pitiful game, or the most pivotal game, he starts out with a speech that just incredibly sobering way, with an admission that he doesn't know what to do. Right? It's like, I don't know really what to say. We're 3 minutes from the biggest battle of our professional lives. And either we heal as a team, or we're going to crumble inch by inch, play by play, until we're finished. And he just lays it out in a very sobering sort of way. And then he does something really awesome, in that he what I took from that was that he removes himself from the equation, acknowledging that he can't do it for them. Right? He's too old. He's done. He kind of steps away figuratively at the climax of the film. He puts the entire team in the primary protagonist role in doing that in their own story. So he kind of levels with them, and then he gives them that call to action and lays the mantle of leadership directly on their shoulders. But I think the real kicker and Laura, it sounds like you've seen this as well. He does it in just with an incredible level of vulnerability that makes him accessible to them in a way that he knows that they really need too. I think he tells them so I've made every mistake a middle-aged man can make. I've pissed away my money. I've chased off anyone who's ever loved me. I can't even stand the face. I can't even stand the face I see in the mirror. And he shares a real personal side with them in a way that he again knows that they need. And then he connects the personal struggles to the challenge immediately in front of them, and the opportunity that life, like football, I think, is a game of inches, right? And those decisions within those moments where the margin of error is so small is where the game is played, the game of life and the game of football. And that those inches that we need are just all around us.
Dan, there are two Easter eggs that you had in there that I really want to pull out here. Number one would be just that whole metaphorical inches, right? When we're talking about leaders and people at the very top of their game, whether it's like Roo said, Michael Jordan, or whether it's Steve Jobs for Apple, very meticulous. Every little inch needs to be perfect, right? Just to have, like, when the first iPod was given to Steve Jobs, I believe he put it in a fish tank and he saw bubbles come out of it, so the air was getting in. He goes, "This is unacceptable. We can make it smaller," right? And it's just little things like that. Was that maybe a little bit too much? Potentially, but it was coming from a place of respect, I would think.
People aren't going to
forget it. Right, they're not going to forget it. It's memorable. It's visual. People see it. They're like, wow, okay, yeah, let's get back to work, right? It's about the little things. It's had that attention to detail that you can't overlook. Great teams, great, whether it's on the sports field or whether that's in business, they don't forget about those finer details. When you miss those finer details or you don't think they're important, it creates an environment where bigger things can start slipping through the cracks, right? And so great leaders are very, very attentive to even the most minute things. Always room for improvement, right? There's no perfection, and they're always looking to find areas to improve. The second Easter egg that I want to bring up was the fact that you said he stepped away. Right at the very end, he's like, "I can't do this. This is in your hands." And for me, a great quality of a leader is his ability to step away, his or her ability to step away, and that team still functions remarkably well. And because they set that organization up to not be a hub and spoke, they're not the center of the wheel and everyone's dependent on them for that thing to turn. No, they are, it's webbed. He's bringing up, she and he are bringing up the people that are going to make this team successful, giving them the responsibility to carry it forward. It's not about him or her. It's about the collective group. And so there's two parts that I really love about that, was just being very meticulous, and also that it's not about the leader, any team. It's not about that. It's about the entire team.
Thank you.
Is there a recent line in a movie, and I'll start, something that has become a part of nearly your daily vernacular and has become a part of who you are? And I'll give you an example. 12 years ago, as everyone in the world is a Meryl Streep fan, she was in a movie called Doubt. Without talking about what the movie was about, there was just this line in the movie. And the line was, people, governments, institutions, relationships, marriages only change when they're on the precipice. And then as the weeks went by and the years went by, I started saying, and I know it's not original to me, but I took it from this. I just started saying, comfort's where everything goes to die. And it was from that movie. And I say that to myself every single day, not the long version from the movie, but I brought back, for me at least, and all my friends and I talk about this all the time, is where everything goes to die and fail. But I got that from the movie Doubt in some different way, shape, or form. And those kinds of things really just altered the way that I lead, and the way that I lead not only my teams and my businesses, but my personal life. But anything from specific lines from anything that you've seen that have just become a part of who you are, become a part of your vernacular, and most importantly, has impacted the way that you personally teach and lead.
I like that, Brian. Thank you. One that comes to mind immediately is, I'll come back to the discussion Laura and Tom we had on fear. And it's more from a book, from a novel I read when I was a kid that I've spoken about before, that's being adapted into a major blockbuster later this year. But there's a mantra from that book that fear is the mind killer I will face my fear and let it pass through me, acknowledging that you can't get around it. I think the meaning there is clear, but I think I'd connect it, Brian, to what you said, that we can really only move past things and through things once we acknowledge the worst possible outcome that we can that could come out of a situation. Recognize it, name it, embrace it, accept it as a potential reality or an existing reality, and then move on. And that's very difficult for me to do. But it's been a very helpful exercise, something akin to, I don't know if you guys listen to Tim Ferriss's podcasts, but he talks about an exercise that he does annually or quarterly on fear setting. And I'd relate it to that a little bit as well. Roo, Tom, Laura, you guys have one as well?
For me, I'm a very, I guess, acoustic person. So for me, it's music. And I think I identify lyrics that are in songs, and music has a way of soothing me, or whatever, whether it's, getting hyped for a big thing, or whether it's, calming down after I might have gotten like a defeat, and, something bad happened at work or whatever. I find music able to capture my emotion and give me that drive or impetus to capture that emotion in that time, but then find a way, to move forward. And one of the ones that, one of the songs that I think most resonates, honestly, I think this song is timeless. And it might sound a little funny at first, but would be Somewhere Over the Rainbow, right? I honestly believe that is one of the best songs that have ever been written, because it's 100% timeless. And for me, it's just, your circumstance, you might be in small town Kansas. It might not be, life might not be what it's like is at the time, but somewhere over the rainbow, something is better, and something better is out there for me, for the world, for anyone, right? And it's having that dream and being able to capture, not just living in the moment, but using that to define, how you're going to change to make something better in the future. And so for me, that song is able, depending on, who's singing it, whether it's, Dorothy in the actual song, or whether it's, someone making a remake now. I just think that it's a very timeless song that people can tap into, especially times like now, right? Times like now where people don't really know what's going on, and they're isolated, they're away from people, and they need hope for a better day. So I don't have on the top of my head, I can't think of an actual a quote from a movie, Brian, but I really identify with song.
Well, I'm really excited now, Tom, because I have found someone at N2 who is equally as cheesy as I am. Anytime you want to go to a Celine Dion concert or anything like that, I'm your guy. Okay.
It's a date.
West Point undergrad, combat officer. So exciting.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Dunn.
I'm diverse. I am very diverse.
You got range, lady. You got range.
That's good. Laura, Roo,
That's great.
Any on this?
Yeah, I'm like Tom. I typically trend towards music lyrics more, as far as just, day to day, and finding any sort of genre or specific song lyrics that fit for whatever the mood is or whatever the context is. But actually backtracking to what we've been discussing that Roo largely brought up, but then everyone's been kind of corroborating, is, that kind of tough leadership, right? It's almost like tough love. And I think an important part of that is that a leader is pulling out the best of someone, right? And maybe the worst of times, and not expecting anyone to settle, and not expecting anyone to just be okay with the status quo. And so one of my favorite movie scenes and movies of all time is the movie Miracle. Has anyone seen that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So about the 1980 Olympics, when the U.S. were the underdog, obviously huge geopolitical implications as well. But the U.S. goes on to win the gold. And in the first medal round game, they beat the Soviets. And it's huge. And they go into intermission losing 3-2, I believe. And the coach, Herb Brooks, played by Kurt Russell, he's gotten a lot of criticism for his tough coaching. And in this moment, though, he knows how to rally his team. And he gives one of my favorite speeches of all time. And he starts it by saying, great moments are born out of great opportunity. And then he goes on to say, that's what you have here tonight. That's what you have earned here tonight. And then he goes on and he says, this is your time. He repeats that multiple times, which is important as a leader. And, you know, in this speech, he says, you were born to be hockey players, every single one of you. You are meant to be here tonight. So just a really powerful speech, so many powerful quotes out of that. But I love the great moments are born from great opportunity.
That's a good one.
I think it's great.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate that. Roo, any quote? I've got one more too.
Oh, I can think of one. I tend to unplug when I watch movies and TVs and let them entertain me, because I used to super analyze it and like focus on like the color grading and what it made me feel. So took it at a very different technical aspect. So I can't remember a quote because I can't watch.
And you should watch movies with my wife and shows me to watch, because she'll love you, because she hates me when I watch movies. I'm like, stop, unplug.
Sorry, we'll watch the scene again.
You and Mr. Kibby get along great.
I do like. I'll tie it back to, in answer to your question there, Brian. I'll tie it back to Any Given Sunday again. I think, and full disclosure, I haven't watched that movie end to end, but I'm going to now. But I think the way that Al Pacino closes that out in the Inch by Inch speech is that he talks about, you know, if I'm going to have any life anymore, he's connecting back to his personal struggles, is because I'm gonna still be willing to fight and die for that inch, because that's what living is. It's living with the 6 inches in front of your face. It's the little moments, it's the little decisions that you make that are going to define you. And I think that's a really good reminder just for living in the moment as well. So it's good. Well, I think we're coming to the top of the hour here, but thank you guys. I mean, I'll see if I can recap here for us, because I want to leave our viewers with maybe a few films to revisit, because I've got a running list going. We talked about a reading list before, Tom and Laura. I think I've got now a watch list that I'm going to go back to. But we talked about the importance of a really calm sense and a really strong, clear, concise, simple messaging with Gladiator. Thank you, Tom. It's I may have seen it 20 times, but I'm definitely going to try to hit up to 50 like Brian has with The Devil Wears Prada. And speaking of The Devil Wears Prada, we talked about, like, and again, I think I've always seen it once, Brian, but I'm inspired now. I'm going to go back and look for the blue sweater scene and how there's power in details and the power of candor as well. Laura, you talked about just the movie Miracle and the really great speech there. As well. We talked about Mad Men, Brian, which again, I'm ashamed that I haven't seen the Mad Men. I'm going to come back to that. And again, the ability to compartmentalize and bring your best self to every meeting. We talked about the Bulls three-peat season, Roo, which, what was the name of this documentary again that we're watching? The Last Dance. The Last Dance. Okay. Growing up during that period and remembering the intro scene for the Bulls when they were coming onto the court, like I'm going to go back and revisit that too. And then, of course, Any Given Sunday as well, and that very powerful speech. So, I think Tom, to your point, I think we have a lot we can learn from the examples in film. And Brian, I'm going to take our call to action coming to close here from you, which I'm going to try to watch everything with a very critical eye and the lessons that I can take. I'm going to pause it. I'm going to rewind it. I'm going to get annoying with it. And I'm gonna watch it. It's gonna be good. I'm just gonna
45-minute episode of Mad Men. For anything else, I can stretch that bad boy into about 4 hours.
easily. But I'm gonna start doing that now and pulling things from it.
Dan, don't forget about mindfulness. I love that part that Laura brought up. I think that bringing that, visualizing how what that big moment is, whether it's in sports, whether it's in the boardroom, wherever. I think the more we can envision it and see ourselves, and that muscle memory can happen. I think that's a big thing that I'm taking away.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, Tom, to your point, a factory of gold, Laura, as you are, like we talked about last time. I think, Tom, that's probably the most powerful of them too. People have got to be able to see the finish line. They've got to be able to visualize where they're headed. And I think in the end, to your point, like really good leaders provide direction. That's probably how they do it best, is helping people picture it. So, Laura, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Well, thank you all who joined us today. It's been good to have you,
Brian.
I get to do whatever I want. Take pictures, and we're not limited by this forum here.
I hope you guys have enjoyed the time with us. Again, we do this every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern time, and we'll be back here again next Friday with the Director's Chair. We'd love to have you back with us then. So we hope you've enjoyed the session. Please subscribe, hit that like button, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, be sure you're watching everything you watch this weekend with a very, very critical eye. And anything you watch that might be an hour in length should easily take 4. Right?
Great weekend, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.